There is still a lot of confusion on everything Kang said and what is true to the MCU. So in this video, I'm going to break this down in the simplest way possible and tell everybody exactly what happened and why Kang alone, in just that one scene of exposition explaining who he is and what happens with the sacred timeline, has confirmed something that many people were arguing about. Yes, all those moments in the MCU happened, but they didn't happen by free will. They were predetermined. So Captain America wielding Mjolnir, taking on the armies of Thanos, saying Avengers assemble, the Hulk doing what he does, the passing of Tony Stark, Doctor Strange looking into all the different versions of the outcome, that was all predetermined by Kang. So when we bring up the sacred timeline in the MCU, what you have to understand is that it's called that because it is the sacred timeline. It is the only timeline that Kang can allow to exist. That's what we learn in Loki. Again, to make this simple, he kept one timeline going and they pruned every other timeline, variation, variant, or version that could spawn out of it, because if you let it go uncontrolled, eventually a Kang will pop up in that one. So the reason there is only one timeline, or was only one timeline in the MCU, is because Kang predetermined it. And as they mentioned, Thanos being defeated, everything in the MCU, the super soldier, everything that happens, everything that's happened in every single film, up until where Loki takes place at the end of time, has all been carefully predetermined by Kang, and he shows it on those pieces of paper. He knew what was coming. He could see it, because again, it's controlled. It was all under his control and the TVA looking over it. And if you look back at the early episodes, there's even more to this, because the Infinity Stones again. The Infinity Stones that were out of different variations of the MCU and the timeline just were used as random paperweights in the TVA, because again, they were useless unless they existed in their own version from where they pulled them from. One set of stones was allowed to exist in the core MCU, the ones that Thanos got his hands on, because they were allowed to be there. They could have just as easily been removed, but again, everything was quietly and carefully orchestrated by Kang behind the scenes, pulling the strings for the TVA. So if you think about it this way, he literally made sure that everything happens as it's supposed to. Nothing else really mattered. Nobody had true free will. And if you look at Kang and his plan and what the TVA was doing, you notice that the moment they deviated by having a different thought or idea or trying to do their own thing that doesn't fall into the correct flow of time that he set, they go in and they prune them. Hence why Loki was pulled out of the timeline. Again, this all goes back to predetermined, no free will, and your actions are 100% controlled by the TVA. So when Thanos decided, hey, I'm gonna go attack Earth, that's because Kang let it happen, because that's what's supposed to happen to make sure time doesn't disrupt itself. If he would have said, well, I don't really want to, I don't want those stones, guess what? That's a variant. That was erased by the TVA. So now I think you start to understand a little bit more of why Kang has been the big bad this entire time, changing our entire concept of view of what the MCU is doing, and now why Kang, one of them, at least the main one, being gone is huge, because nobody can now control what you're supposed to do. Now you have true free will, and true free will that has ramifications on the entire flow and history of all humanity's existence and all of the universe's existence, because again, he can't control any of it now. He's gone. That's why the timeline branched in so many different permutations of the sacred timeline, because now it's allowed to flow.